Hey, Austin Shubert, welcome to the Tick Boot Camp podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, we're blessed to have you, Austin, and it's been a long time coming that we've been trying to get you onto the podcast. I'm glad your schedule finally jived with our schedule, and now here we are. We're going to share your story and your experiences with folks in the Lyme disease community.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. I'm definitely looking. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. So this is awesome.
So, Austin, the folks in our community are accustomed to my gutter New York accent, but we have someone who has a proper English accent here. So, where are you calling in from?
Where am I calling in from?
Yeah, where are you right now?
I'm calling in from Zebulon, Georgia. So it's pretty much mid Georgia, about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. So we got a lot of woods, where we're at. I got about 200 acres of woods right around my house. So
All right, well, we're going to talk about that and talk about what's good and bad about that, right? So
absolutely.
Austin, are you a native of Georgia, or did you grow up somewhere else and move to Georgia more recently?
Yes, I was actually born in Clayton County, Georgia, which is really not too far from where I live now. I was born there, but I mostly grew up in McDonough, Georgia. So it's probably 45 minutes from Clayton County. And I lived there till I was probably 18 or 19 years old and actually moved down here to Zebulon, where my father was living at the time. Um, so ever since then, I've pretty much been living on this side. I was fortunate enough for my dad, who's a builder, to build my house that I'm in right now down here right beside his house. So it's just kind of where I reside now. But I grew up pretty much in McDonough.
All right, so you just shared with us that where you're living now is a rural community. Is it fair to assume that that you've always lived in a rural community?
Always. Yep. My growing up, I would go, my parents have always been split up, and I'd go from mom's to dad's to my papa's house, which is my dad's dad, and everybody, there's always woods around. Everywhere we went. We went to the hunting club, wherever it might be, there's always woods around.
Because I can tell from those folks who are listening to us on the audio format will not see that you have a trophy behind you. So I think that'd be a first. I don't know that we've had a podcast guest who had a trophy behind them. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that you're a hunter or you're from a hunting family.
Absolutely. I've deer hunted, duck hunted, rabbit hunted, everything. Since I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. I mean, ever since I can remember, we've hunted every single season. We do a lot of fishing, archery, just camping in general. Growing up, Dad would always have the camper. We go different places and camp. We did a lot of stuff outdoors. So we definitely grew up in the woods.
All right. So as a woodsman, as an outdoorsman, as a hunter, as a camper, I'm assuming that tick education and Lyme education was a part of your childhood educational experience and cultural experience. Am I correct in my assumption?
Well, we always knew about ticks, but I honestly didn't know about Lyme disease till probably a few years ago. And it's just because one of my buddies, which we'll get to later in the story, had it. I had no clue what it was. And I always knew you could probably get something from a tick, but I had so many on me as a kid and growing up, and I wasn't deathly ill that I was just like, well, as long as you get them off of you, within the first hour or so, you should be fine. It was always that weird thing where it's like, it's probably going to do something, but it ain't doing nothing right now. So I'm just not going to worry about it,
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So I'm assuming you were educated in public schools in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
And as part of your public school education, I'm assuming you took science and health courses during your primary education.
Absolutely. Yep.
And were there ever any either courses or elements of any classes you had taken where you were learning about how to protect yourself from tick bites and from tick diseases?
Not one that I can remember. Not, I mean, even the few college courses I took, everything, I don't remember ever learning about it ever.
Now, talk to me about whether or not you had to take any safety classes or courses in order to get a hunting license or to be licensed to carry a weapon. Was
Mhm.
that a part of your experience either as a hunter or someone who was licensed to carry a weapon?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you turn, I'm not exactly sure what the regulations are now, but when I turned 16, you go and get your hunter safety course and you get a card that basically allows you to be able to hunt by yourself without an adult with you. And I did the in-person course. It was probably a couple days. I think I was out of high school or something. But to be honest with you, as far as tech education, anything like that, definitely doubt that was ever brought up. It was strictly, just hunting. That's all I could really remember by.
Yes.
I mean,
Of course, the purpose of a hunter safety course is to make sure that you have adequate skills to keep yourself safe and keep other hunters safe, right?
absolutely.
And they outline for you what the risks are when you're hunting for yourself and other sportsmen, and they want to alert you to the skills you have to develop so that you can go out and safely hunt. I always find it interesting that so many of the folks that we've interviewed in the past that have taken similar courses to the course you had taken were not given any information about the threats of ticks and tick diseases. Uh,
Yeah, as you know, and a lot of people that are going to be listening to this know, they, you know, they won't even say Lyme's in Georgia right now. They won't say it's anywhere. So them teaching us about ticks, that's not even on their radar, not even a little bit.
And it isn't even here in tick endemic communities like mine. I mean, I grew up in a place where there have been ticks my entire life, and I'm old. Yeah, and back in the late '60s and early '70s, we were tick aware, but really it was more from having an aggressive Italian mother, not because of any education that we'd received, in school or any education or safety training we received as athletes. It was really just, a mother knowing it couldn't be good for us and making sure that we did tick checks all the time, certainly during the spring, summer, and fall. And
Right.
also checking our dogs before we brought the dog into the house because the dogs are always full of ticks as well. And
Absolutely.
big part of it. So talk to us about these experiences you had. You just share with us that you were bitten by ticks, and everybody who's listening to this podcast is already cringing that that this is a big part of your life, but it was not something that you aware that could cause you to become sick. And everyone knows you wouldn't be on this podcast if you didn't become very sick from this. So
Yep.
this is not this foreshadowing is not something that is a surprise to anyone. So talk to us about your earliest recollection of having been bitten by ticks.
So it's obviously hard for me to remember the how young I was when I had my first tick bite. I know I was definitely young because, like I said, I was outside a lot. But I can tell you a crazy story. When I was probably 10 or 11, I was with my cousin and we were at, I believe, our aunt's house or his aunt's somebody's house, and we've been running around the woods all day. And I remember getting back and my head was itching. We were upstairs and I was itching and I pulled a tick off. It was a big Lone Star tick. I remember. And I was like, oh gosh. And then my head started itching again and I pulled another one off. And I was like, what the heck? So I'm a kid. So I don't really know why they're on my, how they got there or nothing. And I start feeling again. I end up pulling like 10 or 11
Ooh.
full grown Lone Star ticks off of my head. And I remember thinking, I don't know what this means, but it's probably not good. But then again, we didn't know anything about ticks. But yeah, I mean, we'd been apparently, I done got in a tick bed when we were running around the house doing whatever in the woods, and they were all in my hair, on my head.
So, Austin, how did you know at that age that they were Lone Star ticks?
I didn't know at that age. I know now looking back because I remember that white dot being on them, and I was like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't know. I mean, I didn't even barely know what a tick was at the time. I knew what it was. I didn't freak out, but I also was like, why do I have so many on me? This is probably not good.
No, it wasn't good. Well, again, I guess the good news and the bad news is with Lone Star ticks is they don't harbor Borrelia, so that's the good news.
Right.
The bacteria that some folks thinks is the basis of Lyme disease.
Hmm.
But you're also lucky because Lone Star ticks are generally the ticks that are most likely to give you alpha gal, which is the meat allergy, right? So that's
Yep.
that's pretty scary. And it's not to say that Lone Star ticks don't carry they do carry other tick diseases, and we'll spend a little bit more time talking about that. So, so you have this early experience as a young child pulling a whole bunch of ticks off your head, which is
Yeah,
certainly
that's
lucky,
it.
right?
Yeah.
And now after you had that experience, did you share with your parents that you've been bitten by ticks? Did you go to any doctors? I mean, what was the follow-up, if any?
I think honestly it was just a joke with me and my cousin. I don't think yeah, I probably didn't even tell my parents. I was hanging out with them all weekend, and by the time I got home, I probably forgot about it at the time. I was probably still scratching my head. But I mean, like I said, it was such a normal thing. Like you have a tick on you, pull it off, get rid of it. I didn't know anybody that had even got remotely sick from a tick bite. So yeah, we never talked about it again.
So talk to us about how what was your health like during the course of your childhood while you're getting all these tick bites and you're having all these these bugs spit into you from the bugs that were biting you.
So my health was always fine as a child. Um, I played sports. I played football. I played football for forever. Baseball, of course, hunting. I did a little bit of everything. And my health was always fine, but I will say growing up, I would always be kind of more fatigued than I noticed my friends were. Um, they might want to go do something and, go hang out, do this. And I just remember kind of being tired and almost thinking to myself, like, why am I so tired? Like, what? I'm not doing anything else different. Maybe I wasn't drinking enough water, whatever, but still, I'm like, why am I so tired? I never really put two and two together until, this past year or whatever. But yeah, so I would say that's the only thing. I never had any major health scares that I can think of. I mean, just a little bit of fatigue, to be honest with you.
What about your mental health? Did you ever during the course of your youth have any mental health issues, suffer from anxiety, depression, any issues with sleep? Give me the rest of your health profile, not just your physical health.
Okay, yeah. So sleeping, never had an issue. Always slept great, no issue there. Now my mental health, I will say it was, well, with the fatigue, you can almost feel like you're quote unquote depressed or just kind of sad, a little down. So I will say I had some of that. Now, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but when I got to high school in ninth grade, I'm probably 14. I can't remember, but I had a really bad episode where I had a lot of panic attacks and really bad anxiety. And I didn't even know what anxiety was. I remember my mom telling me you're having anxiety. I didn't even know what that word was. I had no idea. But I started kind of labeling what I was having as anxiety, and we had no clue why. I mean, I went to the hospital. My mom I think she took me a few times to the hospital and was like, we just got to do something. The doctors were like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's fine. And I'm telling my mom, like, she's like, what is? I'm like, I don't know. I'm, and that took probably a month or two to get over. Of course, I still went to school and everything. I developed really bad stomach issues along with that, and we just kept kind of running with that. But yeah, my mental health, that was the first time I ever, you know, kind of just lost it mentally. And I didn't know why, had no clue why. Nothing crazy had happened.
So, you said you did go to a doctor. You were treated. Was the doctor either the doctor him or herself looking for any basis of this mental health presentation? Was the doctor recommending that you see any other types of doctors to determine if there was a physiological, which by the way, we believe there always is a physiological foundation behind a
hmm
mental health presentation? Was there any search for what was causing you to have this presentation?
No, there was no trying to look for the root cause or anything like that. I do remember going to the doctor one time, and the doctor, which he was a nice guy and everything, but he wrote down kind of how the brain works as far as like anxiety and stuff and tried to get it where I could understand what it was. And ultimately, he just told my mom if he's having episodes like this and it's towards the evening, just give him some Benadryl and it'll help him go to sleep, a little quicker. And so I did that for years. Like, I'd start kind of feeling it's hard to explain it's just almost like a down feeling. And I'm like, man, like I don't feel, I don't have any energy. I don't know what's going on. Um, and yeah, I would just take Benadryl in the evening and kind of calm me down a little bit. And I just go about my day. I thought that's what you did. I didn't know any different.
So Austin, do you recall if the first time you had had your panic attacks, that was in close proximity to a tick bite?
I don't. I can't recall. I know I went to my papa's house a bunch, my dad's house, but I mean, I was always, going to my friend's house growing up. So I'm always in different places and always in the woods, hanging out, doing whatever. I'm sure it probably was around the time I probably got bit by a tick, or maybe it was from something before. I really don't know. But no, to answer your question, I really don't remember a tick bite around then.
So how did your mental health issues develop? Was it isolated to that one window of time where you had this couple of month experience and you were now either prophylactically or I guess treating this with Benadryl, or were these episodes continuing to take place?
So it was pretty much as far as bad episodes like that, it was really just my ninth grade year. It would, and it could have been hormones along with that, whatever I had going on. But that was the worst of it. I really didn't deal with it too bad after that, but I would get episodes of anxiety just out of nowhere, just very random. And I didn't know why. I never knew why. I never had anything, really crazy happen to make me feel that way. But yeah, I would say really it was just my ninth grade year. I was just mentally unstable.
Okay, so we had just to bring us to what the symptoms were at that time. So you had fatigue, and it wasn't kind of tiredness you would witness in any of your friends or any of your teammates or family members. So you had a higher level of fatigue. You had this window of time where you had panic attacks and you had anxiety. How did your physical and mental health develop after that ninth grade year?
So while I was going through that, I had, like I mentioned already, the stomach issues, and that was so bad to the point that I ended up getting a scope down my throat, and they basically looked at my stomach and my esophagus and everything, and they actually diagnosed me with something called esophageal. I don't know the next word to be honest with you, but basically it's where your esophagus is a little smaller. Because I remember I always felt like stuff was getting hung up in my throat. And it was just all the time. And it freaked me out so bad. Like it was hard to take Benadryl, small pill or anything. And they diagnosed me with that. So we just kind of ran with that. And I was like, you just have this and you just kind of got to deal with it. And I dealt with that for a while. And it was pretty bad. I don't know. Looking back now, I'm like, was that alpha gal or something? Was my throat actually swelling because of that? I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I mean, physically, other than that, that's really about it. I mean, it was just really bad stomach GI issues and just mentally unstable, not knowing why at all.
Okay, so I'm assuming, from the foreshadowing you had given us earlier that you continued to be an outdoorsman, you continued to hunt. It was a part of the culture of your community and your family. And I'm also assuming you keep finding ticks biting you during all this time. So fill us in on that. I mean, how often were you getting bitten by ticks, and what steps, if any, were you taking after you were bitten by a tick?
It's hard to say how often, but I will say in high school, me and my friends, we hunted and we fished every day. And of course we played football, my teammates. But I mean, we hunted and fished as much as we possibly could. So it's hard to say exactly how many tick bites and when I was getting them, but I will say in Georgia we have a lot of ticks all the time. And it stays hot down here. So it's hard to say as far as how many I was getting, but yeah, we were outside a lot, and the opportunity was very high for me to always be getting it. I mean, even if we're at the house, we're still behind the house in the woods doing whatever, all the time.
So, talk to us about how your health developed to the point where you became chronically ill. When did you really get sick?
Okay, so just kind of fast forwarding that, I ended up getting really healthy my like my senior year of high school, I felt great. Obviously was working out every day, and I really felt great. I really didn't have any issues or anything like that. But I will say, and I never thought about this until probably about 6 months ago, but it makes a lot of sense now. When I graduated high school, I went with my friend to New Jersey and Pennsylvania for about, I think it was almost 2 weeks. And I 100% got bit by ticks up there because we were walking through the woods to go fish a pond that had tall grass and we had shorts on. And I'm pretty sure I remember the ticks I was pulling off of me. But I definitely got bit by ticks then. But I didn't have any crazy symptoms pop up right away. Now, fast forward probably 8 months or so, physically, still a little fatigue. I always dealt with that. I kind of just got used to that. But I started noticing it was hard for me to remember things. And my memory was kind of bad. And sometimes I would notice when I was talking, I'd almost like slur a couple words, and I never knew why. And the only thing I could go back to was it was from football. Like I played football for so long. And at that time, the CTE, all that stuff was coming out, and I was like, man, there's nothing I can do about that now. I was a great football player, but now it's hurting me. And I always just put it on that. And of course, I never thought about, the tick bites up north or anything like that. But I kind of always dealt with that, but never got chronically sick until I would say I was about 23 or 24. I moved into a house not far from here. And it was the only thing I could get at the time, but it it definitely had a musty smell to it. And I knew it had that in the beginning, but I was like, just put some wall plugins or whatever, make it smell good. Well, I ended up living in that house for 2 years. And during the time I was living in that house, I lived there alone, just me and my dog. I developed really, really bad OCD. They call it pure OCD with intrusive thoughts. And I'd never in my life ever had that. And, for anybody that's dealing with that now, I know what you're going through. It's terrible. It's thoughts that you would never want to have ever in your life. And you can't get it out of your head. I would get anxiety. I've always carried a pistol or whatever my whole life. I'd get anxiety when I seen a gun, or I'd get anxiety when I seen a knife because I'd get these intrusive thoughts that I might hurt myself or somebody else. And it was so bad. I just remember praying to God and just reading my Bible, like, God, help me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what this is. And I never wanted to really leave the house. I was always an outgoing person, but when I was having the bad intrusive thoughts and I couldn't get out of it, and it was stressing me out so bad, I didn't want to leave the house because I didn't want anybody to see me. Number one, I didn't want to act on something because I was so scared I was going to that I was just going to lose control. But I didn't want anybody to see me in that space either. Um, so as I know now, I mean, there was mold in the house. It didn't even have an HVAC system in the house. Everything was basically window units or, like a mini split or something like that. And I found mold on stuff, but at the time I'm just like, oh, I got some mold on this stuff. I need to throw that. Like, that's kind of weird, whatever. Now looking back, I know everything I was experiencing, I was definitely reacting to the mold, 100%.
So Austin, can you build out for us a little bit more about what the OCD experience was like? I mean,
Yeah.
you did paint some very broad strokes, and if it wouldn't be too painful for you to share some detail for folks who are listening to this podcast and maybe going through the same experience, but not knowing what it is and not having been diagnosed with it. So give us some more details about what it was like to have these intrusive thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and what it felt like to be to have the type of suffering you were having by having all these thoughts that were not healthy.
Right. Absolutely. So when people think OCD, they think hand washing. They think biting fingernails. They think stuff like that. But that is a form of OCD. But the version I had with the intrusive thoughts is called pure OCD, and the intrusive thoughts are what they sound like. They're intrusive thoughts. They're thoughts you'd never want to have, and thoughts that you've never had before. Um,
So can you
so
give
I'm
us a specific example? Like what would an example of the thought be, and how would that
yeah.
trigger you when you had that thought?
So just say I had my gun or something, laying on the desk or wherever. I'd walk in the room and I'd see the gun. Normally you see a gun, you're like, okay, now I never even think about it. But your brain starts spinning and it literally goes to the worst possible scenario. So your brain within a few seconds has already made you think about picking up that gun, hurting yourself, hurting somebody else, doing something crazy. And it's literally like that. And you can't turn it off. And then you try to turn it off. You're like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? Or I remember going to the gym and because I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I'd go to the gym and I would walk by people that were like holding plates or whatever, and just thinking like, oh gosh, what if they're about to hit me with that? Or I better defend myself. They're about to do that, and just spin and spin and spin and spin it, and your brain just can't stop. And it's the most random things ever, but it's literally if you can look at anything around you and think about the worst possible scenario, that's what your brain spins to within a few seconds, and you can't stop it. And if you try to stop it, it makes it worse. And when you have OCD, you get obsessive about it, because it's the only way you feel like you can help yourself. So when I was experiencing that, I was doing a lot of Googling, obviously, because I was trying to figure it out. And, obviously nothing went back to mold or anything like that. But it basically just said that you have to try to not control it and just let it happen and go about your day, I guess. I don't know. It was
So,
great.
and of course, one of the challenges that we have when we have those kinds of thoughts is that we're not taught at any level of education, and we're not taught, culturally, about how our brain works.
Right.
And because we don't know how our brain works, we don't know that those thoughts are really just software. And even though it sounds like it's our voice, and even though it sounds like it's us, it's absolutely not us. It's really just software, largely survival software that's been uploaded, into our brain as part of our genetics and as part of the experiences, that we've had with these neural pathways that have developed. But because it sounds like us, and because it's inside of our heads, we think it's us. We think,
Exactly.
we think we're really, thinking these things, when in fact it's really just software that's being triggered. And when the survival software triggers, of course, it's very, very painful, right? It's
Right.
some of the most stressful experiences that we can have in life.
It's absolutely one of the worst forms of torture, if you want to call it, from this disease that, mold, whatever. It's definitely one of the worst things I've ever experienced. I mean, I was buying books, doing everything I could because I'm like, I don't want to be this way, but there's nothing I can do. And at the time, I'm thinking I might have to go on medication or something, but that was freaking me out even more. I'm like, why, what is the problem? I'm healthy. I work out all the time. I owned a fence installation company at the time, and I'd work outside every day, all day. It was never an issue. And this is all happening to me. But yes, it's very torturing because there's nothing you can really do about it.
So, how did you ultimately discover that there was mold in the house, other than just when you first came in, you smelled the musty? I mean, did you see mold around? Did you ever test for mold spores? I mean, what was that part of your journey about?
So the biggest way I kind of felt like those mold in the house is my clothes, if they were in the house for, a week or however long, and then I'd leave the house, I could smell like almost like a musty smell. And I'm like, what the heck? I just washed this. Why is it so bad? Go back, rewash my stuff, and then take it back out after a few days, whatever. And it still smells bad. I'm like, what is going on here? So finally I told the guy because it was on a crawl space, and I looked under there and it was just straight bare dirt. And then, the joist boards and everything. So I called the landlord. I'm like, hey man, I think we need a vapor barrier or something down here. So he ended up putting plastic down on the ground. It's called a vapor barrier. And I was like, maybe that'll help. I don't know why that was making the house so musty, but maybe that'll help. And I remember asking him, I was like, did you see any mold or anything down there? My clothes are always smelling like it. And it's so annoying. It's so hard to get out. Even after I wash it, I almost feel like I can still smell it. And he said, no, I didn't see any mold, but I seen a bunch of white fuzzy stuff. Well, I guess he was thinking mold and me. I didn't know at the time mold could only be black. But now looking back, the mold doesn't have to only be black. It can be white, green, whatever. Um, and he said that was everywhere. So I was like, oh, that's weird, whatever. So that's what I always kind of knew there was mold there. And then after probably about last year when I started going through all this stuff and Googling, listening to y'all's podcast, stuff like that, I started realizing I'm like, oh gosh, I got mold problems. I've lived in mold for 2 years, and that's what was spinning me so bad.
Yeah. So, of course, we know that there are some strains of mold that can cause, for you to have the symptoms that you are suffering, or, well, I should say, in addition to, the impact that some strains of mold can have on you and your mental health, mold is immunosuppressive, right?
Right,
It is going to suppress your immune system, and generally, when people are getting sick from chronically sick from Lyme, it's because our system has become toxic.
right,
That our system is now overwhelmed, and it's generally a combination of things. But the combination of mold and tick diseases is a terrible, terrible combination. So talk to us about whether or not you were getting bitten by ticks when you were living in that moldy house. And was that were you still hunting? Were you still, I mean, you had a fence company, so I'm assuming,
yeah.
you were probably getting bitten by ticks just at work all day.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was getting bit by ticks all the time. The same deal. Always hunting, always fishing. I worked outside doing fence for a living. I was always wearing shorts. Generally, I was definitely getting bit by ticks all the time. And I'll tell you this, I got COVID pretty much right when everybody was first getting COVID, and I really wasn't worried about it because, like I said, I work outside every day. I work out, do the whole thing. When I got COVID, it felt like it about killed me. Seriously, I couldn't get off the couch for a week, and I'd never experienced anything like that. But if I walked 4 steps, I my heart was racing so bad I couldn't breathe, and just
Last time, was that when you were living in the moldy house?
yes,
Yeah.
yep.
So,
Right when
I
I was
mean,
said, it makes sense now. Obviously at the time I'm like, why am I getting sick, but nobody else is from this COVID stuff? And yeah, it absolutely wrecked me.
yeah, I mean, your immune system was compromised, and as soon as the virus hit you, it took you out, right? I mean,
Yep.
it's just what happened, which is terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
So, um, so now let's talk about another experience, or another lesson we can share with folks here is that one of the things we've learned from some of the leading Lyme disease experts is very rarely will someone go from tick bite to chronic illness. It's
Hmm.
very rare. In most cases, what happens is somebody gets bitten by a tick. They remain relatively healthy. Their immune system is able to manage the microbes. And then there's some immunocompromising experience that they have that results in the disease taking off and them becoming chronically ill.
Absolutely.
There are a couple of circumstances where people are going from tick bite to illness, chronic illness, in a very short window of time, and
Right.
two of them are your experiences, believe it or not. The first is folks who are bitten by multiple ticks at one time. In many cases, will become toxic and chronically ill.
Yep.
Second circumstance is if people are living in a moldy environment and they get bitten by a tick. In many cases, they will become chronically ill very quickly after the tick bite because they're already toxic and they're already immunocompromised, and the disease just takes off. Your body just doesn't have the capacity to manage the microbes from a tick bite. So
Right.
you sort of had you had the double header of of having chronic illness shortly after a tick bite, but it doesn't sound like that's what happened to you. So perhaps it did, perhaps it didn't. Share that with us, and talk to us about how despite being a young, healthy, athletic, fit person, you finally became chronically ill.
So this leads us back to exactly a year ago, which is pretty crazy to this day. I found a
Happy
big,
anniversary.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of stuff happened at once. And I'll kind of backtrack a little bit before this. So I got baptized probably a month before then. this is kind of leading into the spiritual side of it. I got baptized. It was awesome. You know, I love my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I got baptized. I got a tattoo of Jesus and some scripture on my arm. And then I did a 3 day water fast. And the whole time I was reading the Bible, I finished the whole book of Matthew. Well, about a month right after all that stuff happened, I found the tick on me that had been on me all night. And honestly, at the time, I didn't really think it was just like any other tick, you know. But this one, I knew something told me, I think it was God telling me to be honest, that this is going to mean something. Because I just remember waking up. I even took a shower and everything before I seen it because it was right here, kind of on top of my collarbone almost. And so when I got, looking down, you can't really see right there. So I got up, took a shower and everything. And I seen in the mirror. I'm like, holy crap, that's a really big tick. Lone Star tick, again, of course. So I pulled that off and it ended up leaving a rash for probably a month. It wasn't a bullseye rash. It was just a small, probably an inch long, half an inch wide, just red rash. And I remember thinking, like, man, this thing's itching, but whatever. Well, during that time, me and my fiance at the time were splitting up. We weren't working out. So I was under a lot of stress. That was stressing me out very bad because it wasn't a good breakup at all. It was very stressful. So I was dealing with that. I just got bitten by that tick. And probably about, I would say 3 weeks after that, after, going through this super stressful, I really can't even explain it. After going through this super stressful time, I started developing really bad insomnia and anxiety and heart palpitations. And I'd never in my life once even felt insomnia a little bit. I've always been somebody that sleeps very, very hard. I mean, I could sleep 8, 10 hours, whatever. So I started developing insomnia, and while I was having the insomnia, I would have really, really bad heart palpitations. Like my heart just racing, and I'd had that before back in ninth grade. I was kind of having the same thing, so I was kind of dealing with that. But at the same time, when I would try to lay down at night and go to sleep, I literally could feel my heart beating in my chest. I could feel it if I was laying on my right ear, I could feel it almost pulsate in my right ear. I mean, it was unbelievable. At the time, I thought it was just anxiety. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure this anxiety out. Like this is obviously a really bad breakup and everything, but I need to get through this. So I tried to deal with it on my own for, this is exactly a year ago. So it was June. I dealt with it on my own for probably 2.5, 3 months. And it was absolute torture not being able to sleep and being so tired, all you want to do is sleep. I mean, it's probably the worst thing that can possibly happen to somebody when they are so tired and they feel like the only thing they could possibly do right now is shut their eyes and go to sleep. But when you shut your eyes, all you do is feel your heart racing and you can't go to sleep. I would go to bed at 9 o'clock and I'd lay there staring at the ceiling until 3 a.m. And I'd fall asleep and have to get back up at, 7 to go back to work. Um, it was absolutely terrible, but that's when I really started getting bad sick, and I could tell, and I was getting very fatigued, like really, really bad. I didn't hit my breaking point yet, but I was going there. I would call my mom or text my mom every day, all day, just asking like, what can I do? I remember I bought like a $200 app on my phone to try to help with insomnia. I honestly can't remember the name of it now, but I mean, I paid the full subscription and everything up front. I'm like, I got to figure this out. And, I'm doing breathing techniques, anything you could possibly look up to try to help you. I was trying to do it and it still would not work. So that kind of leads us in to September. It was actually the opening day of dove season. I think it was September 9th, I believe. It was right around then. So I got up, went dove hunting, of course. Super tired, barely slept the night before, I remember. Went dove hunting, had a pretty good time. Came back, me and my new girlfriend that is with me now, Taylor, love her to death. We went and did something for the day, and came back. And I remember in the evening, I was like, man, I am just so tired. Like I've been tired a lot lately just because I ain't been sleeping good, but I'm like extremely tired. Well, I woke up that next day and it seriously, it felt like a train ran me over and I couldn't barely move. And I was just completely brain fog. I didn't even know what brain fog was. Brain fog, couldn't think. I had to go somewhere later that evening. I was just trying to tough it out. We went to eat at a restaurant on the way. And I mean, I was such bad brain fog. I left my debit card there afterward, which I had to go get the next day. Just terrible. And I was like, what is going on? Like, something's got to be up. So I go to work that week and the same deal, obviously I'm feeling terrible and the whole thing. And I get so sad out of nowhere. I don't even know what's going on. I get so sad. I have to call my mom and I'm just bawling her out. She's like, what's the matter? I'm like, Mama, I don't know. I feel like I'm dying. Like I feel like I am literally dying. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what else I can do. But I seriously, when I wake up, I'm almost mad that I'm alive because I feel that bad. And she's just trying to help me, trying to encourage me as much as she can and everything. And I work out of town every week, Monday through Thursday in Alabama, generally. I called her Monday probably 5 times, Tuesday probably 5 times. I mean, every single day I'm calling her and I'm just crying. I'm calling her and all my friends are, wondering what's wrong, and I don't know what's wrong. And then after, I go through a super stressed conversation with my mom trying to figure out what's wrong with me, I go lay down and my heart's racing so bad I can't go to sleep till 3 a.m. It's just a revolving cycle. And I was just going downhill so quick. So the next week after that, my mom and girlfriend are like, you just need to take some time off. You have plenty of PTO. Just take some time off. And you got out of town every week for work. So I was like, that's probably what I need. And to be honest with you, I had to take time off because there's no way. I mean, I felt so bad that I really couldn't barely function. Like I just terrible.
So let's talk a little bit about the sleep issue, which is
Yeah.
very, very common in the Lyme community. One of the first times we learned about the sleep issues was with Dr. Bill Rawls. That was one of his worst symptoms when he was suffering from Lyme disease. In fact, he lost the ability to sleep altogether, and ended up losing his medical practice, or at least the partners that he had in medical practice when he was an OBGYN. And we've had many, many people share with us this concept of tired but wired, where you're
Yeah,
exhausted and you're trying to go to sleep, and then you're wired, right? You're sort of bouncing, you're bouncing off the bed. I mean, it's just like it's just a very difficult thing. We've had several I guess share that experience with us, and what we've learned is that Lyme disease will actually knock off your cortisol cycles, where
absolutely.
cortisol is, of course, a wonderful, wonderful hormone when it's cycling properly, right? So what happens is, of
Right.
course, your cortisol levels are highest in the morning when you're supposed to wake up, and it wakes you up, and then they begin to reduce as you're getting closer and closer to going to bed. Some of it having to do with the circadian cycle. But what happens when your hormonal levels are being knocked off is, especially when your HPA axis is off, is your cortisol levels are very high just before you go to bed, and then you can't sleep. You just
Exactly.
and this cycle just makes you sicker and sicker and sicker, because we need rest in order to be able to heal. Can't get any rest, and now you're up all night. Then by being up all night, not only are you physically exhausted, you're now emotionally exhausted.
Absolutely.
And of course, all of these thoughts are going through our head, and it just sort of, it's sort of like you're cycling down the drain, right? And I appreciate you being as vulnerable as you are, and you're sharing with, like, you are so distraught, despite being a big, tough, athletic guy. You're calling your mother and crying, like,
Every day.
kid, right? That's a terrible cycle, right? So give us a little bit more. So now you're going to take time off, and you're thinking time off is going to give me an opportunity to heal because it's work that's stressing me out as opposed to, this physical illness that I have.
Yeah, so like I said, I definitely think this has been a big spiritual battle, 100%. And that's what leads us into the next thing. So obviously I take that week off and I don't do nothing all week, and I feel terrible for, my girlfriend. I want to do things with her and stuff, but I can't, so I just accepted it. I just can't do anything. Well, the next week I go to work and lo and behold, Hurricane Helene hits and it's really bad in Georgia. And I work for a contractor that works for a power company. So we're headed out. And you know, with me going through as bad stuff as I was going through and being told that we're about to be shipped off to Augusta and we don't know when we're coming back home, it emotionally absolutely wrecked me because I was like, how am I? I can barely function right now, and my regular job is pretty laid back, and I was just thinking, I can barely function now, and we're about to go to Augusta and work the hurricane where there's zero power for 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's what we had to do. And we were sleeping in sleep trailers, which AKA are just semi-truck trailers with air conditioned units in each, little condo, whatever you want to call it, in the trailer. Um, so I was already doing terrible, but when that happened and we actually got shipped out to Augusta, I went downhill very quick. Like even more, I didn't know I could go, more downhill. But that's when I would say, started getting bad sick. That's when I started developing, other symptoms that we can get into whenever you're ready for that. But yeah, as far as the sleeping and stuff go, I couldn't sleep at all. I mean,
Yeah, so as I'm building up for, so how are your symptoms now devolving? How are you getting worse? And give us some specific details on what the symptoms were.
okay, so the fatigue obviously was unbearable. It was absolutely horrible. The insomnia was definitely had to be one of the worst ones that I had. Um, I started getting bad depression, really bad depression, and obviously not sleeping is not going to help that at all. So I got really bad depression. I was dealing with some really bad OCD, not necessarily intrusive thoughts, but just as far like checking. If I wasn't on my phone trying to look up what was wrong with me, I was asleep. I was doing it all day, every day. I was buying books on my phone. I would be reading a book while my partner's out assessing a pole. I'd be reading a page of a book because I'm just trying to figure out whatever I can possibly do. Um, so I was dealing with that. The whole mental thing was absolutely terrible. It was torturing. But I started physically, other than the fatigue, I started developing leg weakness just kind of out of nowhere. My legs were getting very weak, and I noticed it. I remember specifically, it was probably 5 a.m., and I'm walking out of one of the sleep trailers to go to work. And I walked down the stairs, my legs started kind of shaking, and I was like, I must just be tired. I didn't barely sleep last night, so I guess my body's just probably tired, whatever. Well, the next day is the same. The next day is the same, and it started getting really bad to where I was having difficulty walking. I never got to the point where I couldn't walk, but it was very hard. I'm basically limping around. Um, so I mean, I started having, along with all that, I started having some vision issues. Um, Not necessarily like I couldn't see, but it's almost like I would look at something, but my eyes wouldn't focus on it. And the peripheral even would be off. It's very weird, and I still kind of deal with that now. That's one of the last things I think I'm probably going to get over. But it was almost like inflammation behind my eyes, but it wasn't a headache. And it was like pushing on my eyes, and so I had really bad light sensitivity on my eyes. Stomach issues. I definitely had a lot of stomach issues. Just eating, just whatever. I always had stomach issues when I was at my lowest. But Yeah, that's kind of when it all started going downhill.
So now you did share with us that you treated with a doctor during your childhood. Your parents took you to a doctor when you were having your anxiety challenges. Were you treating with doctors all during the course of the rest of your life, or were you largely just dealing with these migrating symptoms until they went away, and then you just sort of moved on?
I hardly ever went to a doctor. To be honest, I mean, I went to the doctor when I had COVID. But yeah, no, I wasn't a very big doctor person at all.
Okay, I understand that well. So, and I'm sure most of our community understands that well. Maybe even appreciate it even more now that they've seen a lot of doctors. But
Yeah.
let's talk about now. Now, are you? I mean, you're really in a bad way now, right? I mean, certainly emotionally, really
Yeah.
bad way. Physically in a bad way. You're not sleeping. Your OCD is interfering with your ability to work and to even be a good partner to your work colleague.
Mhm.
So are you now finally going to a doctor, or your symptoms just continuing to take off, and do you have new symptoms?
Yeah. So I was able to get basically 1 day off to go to the doctor and then drive straight back, you know. But I was having a lot of what I thought was ear pain. So I'm thinking maybe I have an ear infection or something. Now I know it's my jaw. But so I went to the doctor and I just told him everything that was going on. It's been going on for this long, this and that. Well, they're like, they told me that you probably have an upper respiratory infection. So when you're that sick, and a lot of people will relate to this, and you get told anything, it's almost like the best day of your life. You're like, that's it. Finally, I figured it out. And they told me they put me on a steroid, they put me on antibiotics, the whole deal. The antibiotics, I think it was just man, it was amoxicillin or something, not very strong. And then a steroid, a Z-Pat, whatever it was. So in my head, I'm like, this is it. I finally figured it out. We're gonna figure this out. And they told me they're like, yeah, it can definitely affect your brain stuff. So I'm Googling all that. I'm like, oh yeah, we got it figured out. Well, I take all the medicine, another week or two goes by, and I'm getting worse. I'm definitely getting worse. So I go back to the doctor and they're like, this time we're gonna do a full vitamin panel. We're gonna do full blood. I mean, they took so much blood. It wasn't even funny. So they ran everything they could possibly run, and the only thing that popped positive was EBV. So at the time, that was really big to me. Honestly, I thought I figured it out once they told me I had EBV because you start reading stuff about EBV mono. Um, it can do mental thing. It can like the leg weakness and all that I was experiencing. Like I knew it could do that. And honestly, every symptom that mono can give is the symptoms I had, down to the insomnia, everything. So I took that and ran with it big time. And the only thing that frustrated me was I was like, okay, what can I do? And they're like, well, you're just gonna have to kind of let it run its course. And I'm like, run its course. If it's been running its course, it's been 4 months now. I haven't been able to sleep in 4 months. Like, what do you mean run its course? But so I tried to go on with that. And I just steadily kept getting worse, kept getting worse, kept getting worse. And it became very apparent to me that this obviously the mono test was positive, but something ain't right because I'm steadily getting worse. I am dealing with a lot of stress because I'm out of work. I don't even know when I can go back home. I mean, we were gone for like 3 weeks straight before we were ever, able to come home for a few days and go back. But the whole time I got a dog that I'm trying to find somebody to watch all the time, and he's not, he doesn't just get along with everybody. You kind of got to know him. So every day I'm communicating, trying to get my brothers to go let him out, get my mom to let him out, get my dad to let him out every single day, and I don't even know when I'm going to come home. So I was very stressed out, and I'm dealing with all this stuff, and I mean, I know I keep saying I just kept getting worse, but I really did just keep getting worse. Like it's as low as I could possibly get. I was there.
Every time you think you've hit bottom, you find a new bottom.
You sink again. It's crazy, man.
So, one of the things that, of course, a lot of our listeners are feeling anxious about, because we've heard the same story over and over again, is when we don't have Lyme literate medical doctors to treat us. A couple of things seems to be a pattern we see over and over again, right? And one of the first things that we see often is when somebody comes in with symptoms like yours and you're treating with a doctor that's not a Lyme literate medical doctor, they'll give you steroids. And the problem, of course, with steroids is they're immunosuppressive. So you felt good for
Right.
a short time. It may have helped you with some of the brain inflammation that you were dealing with.
Yep.
So might have helped you with some of the mental health symptoms. But then what happens is it allows the disease to take off even more. It allows the bugs to have, even greater growth because your immune system has been suppressed by the steroids, right? Another thing that's pretty common we see in this community is that when you're going through your panel of blood tests, Epstein-Barr shows up first.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean it's the only bug. It just means it's the bug that your system right now is no longer able to manage, right? Because we all have Epstein-Barr virus. It's a part of our microbiome. Our immune systems, in most cases, is managing it. But now, because you're so immunocompromised, this bug is now taking off because your immune system is focusing on other types of bugs that it's trying to manage, or your immune system is now so compromised that it really can't control any bug. And rather than that EVB positive test being a signal that they need to continue to look for other challenges, they like you come to the conclusion that that's what we should be treating. And
Right.
some of the treatment they used was good, some of the treatment they used wasn't good because there was a larger picture that they were missing. So talk to us about how their failure to see the larger spectrum of disease that you were dealing with caused you to get even sicker and have another floor drop, and you get even sicker despite thinking that wasn't possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It was terrible. And what makes it even worse thinking about it looking back is I think the second time I went to the doctor, like I said, when I had that tick bite, I felt like God told me that's going to mean something. And that second time I went to the doctor, they took a lot of my blood and everything. And I remember thinking that they took the blood back and then a nurse came in and I remember telling them, I was like, I got bit by a tick that was only for a long time, 3, 4 months ago, can we check for I didn't even know what the diseases really were, but I was like, can we just make sure I don't have some kind of tick disease? She's like, yeah, I'll let the nurse know or whatever. Well, they never ran the test. She just told me that. So I honestly just kind of forgot about it. But yeah, it definitely, I mean, every time I would call the doctor every other day because I thought I was dying. And every time they would just tell me, we're sorry, but you just have to let it run its course. It's EBV. It's terrible. It's bad. We've had it. We've all had it, and everybody that gets it's bad. But I was like, this can't be, man. This is different. Like I'm a pretty tough guy, and this is absolutely wrecking me. So it made me way worse when you have somebody who you think is the medical professionals that should know everything when it comes to health. When they tell you to just let this thing run its course, but you feel like if you let it run its course, it's going to kill you, it really mentally messes with you really bad.
So what you do? You know your medical professionals are not giving you the care that you need. You know that you're getting sicker and sicker. Every time you think you hit rock bottom, you find a new floor being pulled out from under you. So what do you do next, Austin?
So to be honest with you, it was probably a God sent thing, but I one of the times, weeks go by, really a month or so goes by, and one of the times we're home from the storm, I was talking to my cousin and I think he wanted, maybe go do something or something. I was like, man, I can't. I feel so bad. I got mono and this and that and the whole thing. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I can't barely like walk. My legs hurt that bad. And he told me, he's like, oh yeah, our buddy Zach is actually his boss, somebody that I used to work for as well. He's like, yeah, he had Lyme disease, man. He couldn't barely walk. And it was kind of like a light bulb went off. I was like, I do remember I worked for him when he had Lyme disease and he couldn't barely walk. And he was like, yeah, he had to do some kind of blood transfusion or something to get back right, which now I know was just the SOT treatment he did. But so I hung up with him and I was like, I'm gonna call Zach. So I called Zach And I was like, hey man, I can't remember the exact conversation, but basically told him everything I had going on. And he kind of stopped me when I got to EBV or mono. He was like, your EBV was positive? And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, okay, go on. I told him everything else. And he literally, when I got done telling him everything, he was like, yeah, man, I had every single symptom that you have right now. And I'm not a medical professional, but I'm pretty sure you have Lyme disease. And for the first time in this whole journey, it's almost like I felt happy because I finally, somebody's telling me I'm not just shot out. And what really solidified it for me when I was talking to him is I didn't bring up the depression and stuff I was having because, tough guy. I don't want to do that or whatever,
You
which
don't want to lose you don't want to lose your man card.
exactly, which is dumb, by the way, for everybody listening. You should, you can talk about any feelings you have, but he brought it up. He was like, man, when I was going through it, I had bad depression and I thought I was going to be like this forever. And I would wake up and he was like, I was never suicidal or anything, but I knew there was no way I could live like this the rest of my life. And when he said that, I was like, that's exactly how I feel. And that was like the nail in the coffin. I was like, I'm about to learn everything I could possibly learn, about this Lyme disease stuff and tick-borne disease, whatever. So while I was on the phone with him, he told me, he's like, yeah, he was like, man, I went to so many doctors, spent so much money, the whole deal, like we all do. And he was like, I finally got led to the Genesis Center in Cumming. And he was like, man, Dr. Sloan, he's like the witch doctor, man. He's so good. He knows so much stuff. And he kept saying that. And I was like, I got to meet this guy. So I think I tried to set my appointment up like the next day. Well, the Genesis Center, Dr. Sloan keeps it very small. It's family ran. So it's not a huge organization or anything. And they just get really busy, man. Like they get very busy. So my quickest appointment to get in, we're in October now. My quickest appointment to get in is like middle or end of February. And once I heard that, I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, yeah, like I obviously that's great. I can't wait to get in and talk to this guy and try to figure out what's going on. But I might die before I make it to there. Like I feel that bad, And so what I end up doing is I set my appointment up, did the whole thing, and I'll go back to Zach's stories real quick. So he told me kind of what he did to help him out. And he told me some different supplements and stuff I can go ahead and start taking. And then he told me about the SOT therapy that he did. And he told me, it's like, man, it took a long time. It's expensive, but it's the only thing that got me back to where I am now. And now he runs, 10Ks. He works out every day, does the whole deal. So fast forward to when I was trying to set up my appointment, and it was middle into February. And to be honest, I got very, very sad because I was like, man, I'm trying to make it till then and I don't know if I can. So I went to another holistic doctor. I basically just found a holistic doctor around me and went to him and gave her the whole spiel, told her everything that's been going on. And she was good and she really helped me. And what I'll credit her for helping me the most is my sleep. She was able to just with me taking, I remember I was taking vitamin A, I was taking a bunch of homeopaths. I really was taking about every vitamin you could take. And she just put me on probably 20 different things. And I probably needed to be taking all of them at the time. But um, after going to her for about a month or two, my sleep finally, it started getting to where I could fall asleep before 3 a.m. Which was, at the time the greatest thing in the world. But so basically, I went to her and I knew I was just going to her to kind of fill me in till I get to the Genesis Center. And that's what I did. And I went there. And so we did the blood work and everything there. And I remember she took
This is so this is at the holistic doctor's
the
office or
whole,
at the Jenna Center?
the holistic doctor. So I kind of jumped around right there. So when I went to my appointment and I told her everything that was going on, we did the blood work and everything. And she did, I remember it was either 21 or 22 vials of blood. I thought I was going to pass. I mean, I was sitting there for what felt like 30 minutes. It was the most blood I've ever seen. And she ran everything she possibly could. And it come back, and Lyme disease, of course, was negative. It was LabCorp. So my LabCorp test was negative. She did LabCorp and Quest, and the only thing that was positive was still the EBV, obviously, and it showed that I had alpha gal, and I was like,
Alpha gal. Yeah.
alpha gal, yep. So I was like, huh. So this is, I got the EBV stuff. Now I'm reading that Lyme can re-trigger EBV. This is showing I have alpha gal. I was like, this is all kind of starting to make sense. But I was like, the Lyme test is negative. What the heck? Bartonella, she did the whole thing. They're all negative.
The whole panel, tick-borne illness
Yeah,
panel.
the full LabCorp Quest panel. So everything was negative. And I was like, man, what's going on? Well, the more I started reading, I'm like, I don't think these LabCorp and Quest tests are actually real good. And when I talked to Genesis Center, they told me, how much vibrant the MDL stuff was. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna let that discourage me, because any little thing like that, when you're in a bad mental spot, man, it really can spin you really, really bad. And I remember now thinking about it, I think it was my first appointment actually. I went there. My mom went with me. And by the way, my mom,
So I just want to make sure that we're following your timeline. So you're done with the holistic doctor. You're now going to meet with Dr. Sloan at the Genesis Center.
yes. So just
Okay.
jumping back to the holistic doctor real quick,
Okay.
just so people know how bad it really was. After my first appointment or during my first appointment, I asked her if they do SOT therapy because I've been learning about this SOT stuff and it's what helped my buddy. And she said, no, they don't do that, this and that. And it really broke me. And I remember when I left that appointment, my mom was there with me. My mom's been with me the whole journey. I love her to death. She's amazing. But I remember I went back to my work truck and I was about to drive back to Augusta and I just I just started bawling crying because I'm like, this one thing that somebody's told me that helped them, and this doctor isn't even doing it, and I feel like I'm about to die. And I lost it for probably 30 minutes. And I remember God telling me while I was crying that I got you. He told me, he's like, I got you. And I remember thinking, like, I know you got me, but I can't do it. And it just kept pushing me forward. So I just wanted to share that for so people know how bad it really was in the moment. It was
Thank you.
absolutely horrible. So we'll go ahead and jump to the Genesis Center.
So,
So
so Austin, if I could just interrupt for a second, I just want
yeah,
folks to know that we've actually interviewed Dr. Sloan from the Genesis Center. He was episode 389 of our podcast. So, folks want to learn more about Dr. Sloan and the Genesis Center. He's an awesome guy. We did an awesome interview with him. We have some more to share with folks. So, now tell us about what it was like at Dr. Sloan's office and how is it different from all the other doctors you'd ever seen before?
so number one, when you walk into Dr. Sloan's office, um, there's Bible verses everywhere, and it just you just feel like you're finally welcomed. He's got posters and stuff on the wall that shows symptoms, and then it says, Bartonella or Babesia, whatever it might be. And it's just like, wow, like they're actually they're making me feel like what I have is actually a real thing. Um, and when I first went in, I believe it was just for the initial blood draw and everything like that. And the ladies were so nice. Chastity and her nurse and everybody up there, they're so nice. I love them to death. But yeah, so my first appointment there was just blood draws for the Vibrant, um, the MDL, and they might have did a LabCorp too for like Rocky Mountain, something like that. But we get the test sent off and usually takes about a week or two to get the results back. And I finally get the results back, and the Lyme disease, the VS, I think it's VSLEL1 or something like that. It's positive for Borrelia. I have two or three other bands positive for Borrelia. Um, my Bartonella is right on the line. Bartonella Hensley is right on the line. If point 0.9 was the positive line, I was at like 0.85. So I'm right there beside it. Um, and then I go to my MDL results and it shows that I'm positive IgM. So the other was IgG was the bands that were positive. For the MDL test, my IgM, Borrelia afzeli and Borrelia garini, were both positive. IgM on that side. So I'm like, holy crap, like I got a lot of stuff going on here.
And
So,
some of it was a recent infection, some of it was an older infection.
right, exactly. And to be honest with you, when I seen them results, and I was working in Augusta, of course, I was in my work truck. When I seen those results and I was just sitting there by myself, I've never felt so much emotion probably in my life because I'm like, finally, for the past, I don't know, 6 months, whatever it was, I finally have something that I can show everybody that thinks I'm just going crazy, that this is why I'm going crazy. It's not me. It's not me because I'm just not tough, or it's not me because that horrible breakup I went through and I'm just having PTSD from it. That's not what it is, dude. This right here is showing why I feel the way I feel. And if you would go listen, I listened to Dr. Sloan's podcast as well, and it explained everything perfect to me. I listen to it all the time, to be honest with you. But yeah, so for the first time in my life, or on this journey, I felt like we're actually headed in the right direction, and it was one of the greatest feelings I've ever had in my life.
So you
Seriously.
have the epiphany. You now know what your health challenge is, and you obviously have some faith that there is a path forward, not only because of the unique experience you have when you get to the Genesis Center, but you also have a friend who validated their treatment protocol.
Yep.
So in addition to being validated and being able to explain to folks that there is a physiological basis for all of the various challenges you've had, both physical and emotional, but now you also now have a path forward. So talk to us about how that helped you emotionally, knowing there was a path forward, and how did the Genesis Center do? Did they meet your expectations? And what kinds of things did they do that was similar to your friend's experience, and what kinds of things they have to do was different for you than they used to treat your friend's illness?
Yeah. So like I've already said, they're awesome. I love everybody out there. I mean, when you walk in, you just feel welcome. It truly is. I've called, so my doctor is Chastity, that obviously works for Dr. Sloan there. So I don't work directly with Dr. Sloan, but every now and then I'll catch him walking by or something, and I'll just ask him a question or something. He's always very straight to the point, gives you the information you need right then.
Just a really nice man.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so my experience there has been awesome, man. They validate everything that every time I bring up any kind of symptom, there's always a reason for that. Like it's not just, I don't know why you're having that. No, it's, hey, you're having that because of this. There's a reason that your legs are the way they are. You probably have nerve damage from the Lyme disease, or that Bartonella that's not positive right now. It might pop positive later. It could just be compressed or suppressed right now. So there's always answers for everything, and the testimonies. I mean, everything up there. I absolutely love the Genesis Center, and seriously, I've listened to his podcast on y'all's or his episode on y'all's podcast so many times, and every time I listen to it, it's like I learned something else. I'm like, how did I miss
Yeah.
that the first time?
Yeah, I mean, he is just a brilliant man, an absolutely brilliant man,
He's awesome.
and he's so dense. You do have to chew on it a couple of times before you
Yeah.
can get all of the brilliant value he shares. So I mean, just a great man. So talk to us about what he did. Well, I mean, or I should say not what he did, but what the Genesis Center did. What now we have your diagnosis. You're in a place where you're comfortable. Specifically, what did you do? And how did the treatments, how did they help you? How did they cause you some additional challenges? Maybe what'd you do?
Yeah, so the first time I went there, I think they actually went ahead and started me on all the supplements, because they obviously aren't intrusive. They're not going to hurt anything. So I started on a gut protocol, which honestly, I don't know exactly what's in all the stuff. I just know it's called Gut Protect, and then there's another one that's called Flora Restore. I started nystatin. Through all this, my brain fog got really, really bad, really bad. And after learning from Dr. Sloan, that can come from candida, overgrowth in the gut.
Yep.
So I was taking that. I'm trying to think. I mean, other than, regular supplements, vitamin D, magnesium at night, I was taking, or I'm still taking something called corticalm. It's got ashwagandha and stuff like that for in the evening, helps out a lot. Um, Man, I'm trying to think. So when I first went, I wasn't put on the stuff that I'm still taking currently right now, which is the methylene blue and some of the other things that are kind of healing my nervous system. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was basically just supplements, the full gut protocol, because they really explained to me how your gut works and all this, because I had no idea how your gut, when your gut's ruined, everything's ruined. And they really explained to me how that works. And so we
So,
started working at my gut.
let's talk about that also. So, I mean, you were dealing with gut problems from your childhood. I mean, this was
Yeah,
your gut issues were something you were dealing with your entire life. And of course, it's important from an immune health standpoint to rebuild your gut because somewhere between 70 and 80% of your immune system is in your gut.
absolutely.
So when your gut is unhealthy, you are immunocompromised, and so the Genesis Center with you identified that you had gut issues that had to be built because they understand, as most good Lyme practitioners understand, is that it's your immune system that's going to win the battle, right? And
Right.
they started to rebuild your immune system. Of course, now there are a lot of challenges with your having a gut with challenges. In part, it's going to have an impact on your brain health because
Hmm.
because of the vagal nerve. It's going to your second brain is in your gut, and there's a direct connection between your gut and your brain. So a lot of the challenges that you're having with anxiety were likely triggered by vagal nerve challenges that were centered in the gut.
Yep.
Of course, you were sharing with us that you probably had overgrowth because of antibiotics or other things that you were taking, and that
Mhm.
was causing you to suffer brain fog as you were going through that healing process. So after you finished the gut protocol, what was next? What was the next thing that they offered to you?
So I did the gut protocol. Now, when those tests come back positive, I immediately went in for SOT blood draw. They explained to me everything SOT, which I already knew because I was looking everything up, so I knew how much it was, a whole deal. Um, so I went in for the SOT blood draw, and for people that don't know, they take your blood, they send it to RGCC and or RGCC, whatever it is, in Greece, and they can make the antisense therapy for you. And that usually takes about a month. So it's a long month. You're ready to get it right away. So while that's being sent off, they started me on methylene blue, which I think has definitely helped me a lot. And during this journey, I had to when I went to the regular doctor, I requested to be on Prozac because the depression and stuff was so bad. Um, so I was taking Prozac and stuff at the time as well. But basically, the methylene blue, man, I wish I had my medicine bag in here. I could go through it right now. I still take stuff every day. Oh, a big one. I take like a biocidin detox charcoal, activated charcoal, zeolite clay, I think is what it's called. All that. I take that every single morning because,
All
they
right.
explain to me what that does.
Taking binders.
Right. Binders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because we don't want the bugs that your body's killing off to be recycled through your system because we know that our immune system will react not just to live bugs but also to the dead bugs. We have to find ways of
Exactly.
detoxing that. So what else are you doing? Or what else were they? So you deal with the blood. I'm sorry, the gut rebuild. You're in the process of rebuilding your gut. You do your blood draw so that the SOT therapy can go underway. You
Hmm.
begin to start taking some other supplements like methylene blue. They give you
Hmm.
binders so they can bind it. What else are they having you do?
Got the binders. I'm taking something called Dual Tox DPO. It's not a binder, but it's basically detoxing. It's got milk thistle. It's got the B12, everything you need. All that's in that. I mean, I'm still taking majority of all that to this
All right,
day.
so your system has to you have to find ways of getting these toxins out of your system, right?
Hmm.
So and we're always focusing on, are you peeing? Are you pooping? Are you
Right.
sweating? We have to get everything into your out of your system, into your kidneys, and into your liver, and we have to be able to get these out of your system. So are you starting to feel better now? You're building your gut, and you're now, detoxing, and getting your detox pathways prepared for larger die-off.
Right.
You had some brain fog, but that's now starting to clear. So you went through this, essentially what we call the prehabilitation process, where you're
Hmm.
getting yourself ready for the process of aiding your body with killing the bug.
Right.
So do you now start the SOT?
Yep. So I got my SOT almost exactly 3 months ago in March. I got it on March 14th. And to be honest, I was having a really rough time right around then. I would feel halfway okay. My legs and stuff, they've been the same pretty much well, they've gotten better, a lot better since, right when it started happening. But my legs I still have some weakness and stuff like that. But some days I just wake up and just feel super down and very fatigued. And I remember specifically the day I got my SOT, I felt that way. But so I did that, and my experience with that was obviously it was very easy. I mean, it's literally an IV they put in you, and well, I know this is audio only podcast. So I was going to show you how small the SOT thing is. It'll blow your mind. It looks like one little water droplet in the bottom is the whole everything. Obviously, they put that in saline stuff like that and give it to you in IV, but. So I did that, and initially I had no reaction. Everything was fine. And then I think it was about 10 days to 2 weeks in, I started kind of feeling bad, but I was prepared for it because I learned from the podcast that that's probably what's going to happen. So I kind of started feeling bad. All my symptoms were kind of getting worse, but that only happened for probably another week or probably about a week. I was feeling pretty rough, and I knew that was part of the process. And pretty much ever since then, I've been sticking to the regimen. I take my stuff every day, and it's just like I slowly, obviously it's been 3 months, but I'm just like slowly, even if it's a 0.5% a day, if I'm getting 0.5% better every single day, I'm just slowly getting a little bit better. During this journey, I lost about 25 to 30 pounds at one point, and I was very skinny. There was nothing I could do. I was eating probably 6,000 calories a day. I mean, it was unreal how much I was eating, and my weight was falling off. I had no clue why. I've never had that problem in my life. But as after the SOT and everything, after I got through those first 2 weeks and I just kept with the protocol, my weight finally started coming back. And now I'm right back at the weight I've always been. But yeah, that kind of leads us back in. I mean, like I said, I'm 3 months post SOT, and I just went the other day and talked to Chastity, and she was asking me how I felt before the SOT versus now. And my answer was I feel about 70 to 75% better. And it's only been
Wow.
3 months.
So Austin, are you back to work? And if you're back to work, are you comfortable that you're performing at a high level? Where are you professionally?
Yeah, so I've been working the whole time. My boss and all my friends have really helped me out a lot. I mean, they all if I have to go to the doctor, they'll make it work. Like they've been great through this whole process. Love them to death. So I've been fortunate to be able to work the whole time. And this stuff it can be expensive for healing. I mean, insurance doesn't cover anything, so it's
It
expensive. So
it is expensive.
yeah, it's very expensive. And the SOT, which, it's great, but it costs a little money. And some people don't have the money. But luckily I was working the storm, so I was able to make that extra money. Basically all the extra money I made from the storm, I just put right back into Lyme disease. But um yeah, so I can't remember your question.
No, I'm just asking how you're doing professionally. I want to give folks, a sense of how you're doing professionally, how you doing socially, everything
Right.
with you and your partner, and how you doing emotionally. I mean, give us all that.
Okay. So today I feel pretty good. To be honest with you, like I said, I feel 75% better. The only bad symptoms that I'm dealing with still is the leg weakness, which it's just from nerve damage. It's just going to take some time. I'm actually about to start peptides, BPC 157 and TB 500. After talking to the Genesis Center, I'm about to start doing that process and try to rebuild everything since I'm finally in that phase. But yeah, man, I'm able to work. I work out of town every week. Socially, I have no issues. I really don't have any bad anxiety. I don't have any depression, anxiety. I was able to come off of Prozac also. No issues there. And I know there's a big stigma with SSRIs and Prozac and, Zoloft and all those. And to be honest, I never had a bad experience, man. It really helped me out a lot. And I think my body was barely producing serotonin. So with that drug helping me absorb the little serotonin I have in my body, it really helped me out a lot. But back to today, yeah, I'm doing a lot better. I'm actually able to do things on the weekends. Before it's like when I get home from out of work or out of town, on the couch. And now we can actually plan. Like today, we went and ate lunch about an hour from here, me and my girlfriend, and just hung out, went to the grocery store. I'm able to walk around. I'm doing a lot better.
That's awesome. So we're getting to the end of the podcast, and this has really been great. I mean, you've really done a great job here, Austin. So let's talk about the second journey that we go on when we're on any journey, right? We've had this journey of achievement where you've gone through some unbelievable challenges, and now you've accomplished a great deal. But let's now talk about the journey of transformation, because as you've been working on all these things have been working on you. And you did share with us that you were recently baptized. Congratulations.
Just thank you.
But talk about the spiritual transformation you went through, and how this helped you to understand uh, what you were made to do and who you were supposed to serve.
Absolutely. I seriously feel like probably 90% of this is spiritual. I mean, just how it happened, the way it's happened. And I never in a million years would have thought I could ever get beat down like I've been beat down. But one thing I do credit myself with, and it's to the people around me that always told me to keep God first, is I've never given up on him. And I've always, prayed, prayed, prayed. And he's always delivered. Even if I needed just a little push to get through the day, he always delivers for me. Um, but yeah, it's been such a journey, and it's it's kind of crazy how when you're so bad off and the only thing you want to do, honestly, is just live. It's just to be able to live. And I mean, really, I felt like sometimes the only person I could talk to was Jesus and praying. But I truthfully do believe that he's put me through this pain because of a purpose. And the reason I say that is kind of a crazy story. I know we don't have a lot of time, but long story short, my neighbor just came down with Lyme disease and he didn't even know he had it. And he's been having the same symptoms as me since the same month that I had the tick. He got bit by a tick from the same woods at the same time. And I'm a conduit to be able to help him. And now he's at the Genesis Center. And, he's in the early process of it. So he's really going through it. And for people to understand how bad this can really get, he actually had to check himself into a mental health facility, and pay, it was like $15,000 for him to stay there, because he mentally got so bad. And that just goes to show, and he knows what's going on, but he can't handle it. It's that bad. But yeah, I mean that's just one person right there. I had somebody messaging me yesterday, and was asking about Lyme disease, and I'm like, man, like if I'm able to help somebody, this was all worth it to me, and it all was. And reading my Bible and just reading the story about how Jesus saved us, he had to suffer, man. He didn't just he didn't just walk to the cross and just kind of stood up like he had to suffer. He got beat. He got whipped. It was horrible. It couldn't have been any worse. You know, he got gashed in his side. He was hanging there for days on days. But in the end, there was a purpose for his pain. And that's my message to everybody out there is you might be in the darkest spot of your life. And I've been there, trust me. And you don't know how to move forward. You don't know what to do. But I just want you to know that you do have some fight in you. And you don't have to give up. And you shouldn't give up because there's purpose in your pain. And everything you're going through, one day somebody's going to ask you how to get through something, and you're going to have this whole story to be able to tell them, and it's going to motivate them to push them forward. And then they're going to go help somebody else out. And it's just a ladder and effect. And you really when you're having those days, and I say those days, it's when you honestly you don't know how you're going to make it through the day. You honestly think you're going to die when you're having those days, man, you have to find some grit and do whatever it takes. And I'm not saying going and doing something physically. If it means trying to take a nap, you by God, you take a nap. You and don't listen to everybody that is just trying to tell you to do this or do that and get like listen to yourself, trust God, and keep moving forward and don't give up. Do not give up.
So, Austin, a couple of things you've touched on that I'd like to um, just flesh out over the last couple of minutes of our time together, and that is you talked about purpose. And one of the things we've seen over and over again on this podcast is that although this disease is horrific and you would never wish it on your worst enemy, and it just sucks. The people who have the shortest path and the people who have I think the best experience with this terrible disease are people who are recognizing that there is a purpose in this, that their purpose, their God-given purpose, is something that will be revealed to them. And when you have the opportunity, when going through these challenges, if you keep looking for that purpose, you're going to find it. And as you find it, that will allow you to have the physical, emotional, spiritual growth that these types of experiences allow you to have and become, the person you were born to become and to help. And some of that help, of course, which now gets to the emotional piece and the emotional growth, will be serving other people who have Lyme disease. But there are
Yep,
going to be many other people that you can serve and many other people that you can help in so many different ways because of this journey that you've been on. And then, of
absolutely.
course, then there is the belief piece, right? And I will share with you that generally what we find is that believers generally are people who have a shorter path because they have a shorter path to believing they will get better, right?
Right.
Just you have to believe you're going to get better or you're not going to get better.
Absolutely.
We keep quoting Henry Ford, who has that famous saying, those who believe they can do something and those who do not believe they can do something are both right, because it is that belief piece, right? So you've talked about purpose, you've talked about belief, and then of course we have the action piece, right? Where you took action by going to various doctors and getting yourself to the Genesis Center and being a really coachable patient, where
Right.
whatever it is that your practitioner is asking you to do, you do it and you stay with the plan and you follow the protocol and you've gotten unbelievable results in a short period of time. And that's one of the things that I hope are not triggering for folks who are listening to this podcast because despite your journey really sucking and nobody really deserving it, believe it or not, you had a pretty short journey, both from the
Right.
point of your illness and the standpoint of your healing. We have in some
Absolutely.
cases people who have been suffering for 20, 30 years with these terrible symptoms. So,
Yep.
thank God that you've had a short path, and thank you again for sharing that with us. But I do want to emphasize the framework of purpose and looking for your purpose and believing you will discover more about yourself and your purpose in this journey. Belief, believing that you are going to heal and then action and taking action and finding a good coach like you did at the Genesis Center and then the other
Right.
people that you've been coaching. So thank you. That's a really powerful framework.
Yes,
So
sir.
So talk to us about what you think is going to be in your future. What kinds of things is God putting on your heart, and what can we expect from Austin?
Man, I don't know. Doing this podcast, I've been very fired up about it. Um, I feel like God's using me like a conduit, like I said, just trying to help
Absolutely,
others.
absolutely.
So, and I would never do a podcast or anything like that if I hadn't gone through something like this. Like any podcast, I'm just not that guy. I'm very outgoing and talk, but I'm not to that extent. But with this happening, I have so much confidence to talk to anybody and tell them exactly why they're going through and what they're going through and the whole deal. So
And you've done a
I
fantastic job, Austin. You've been awesome. This has been an awesome podcast.
I really appreciate that, man. This is my first podcast ever, which
That's
I'm
oh,
sure on here it's probably everybody's first podcast a lot of times. But it's yeah, I don't know what God has in store for me, but I can't wait, to be honest. I'm still on the recovery. I'm like I said, I'm dealing with the leg weakness and stuff like that. And some days I have bad days and I start feeling bad. But I always yeah, it's kind of a funny thing, but it really helped me get through a lot of stuff. But I would play Rooster by Alice in Chains in my truck as loud as it would go, and I would just listen to that part where he would say there ain't a way, or he ain't found a way to kill me yet. And I literally just think about that's the devil, and I'm not giving in to him. There ain't no way. He ain't found a way to kill me yet, and it ain't gonna happen. So I don't know what God has in store for me as far as the Lyme journey goes. Maybe I'll talk on other podcasts and help other people out. I don't know, but I'm definitely I'm looking forward to whatever it is, man.
that's awesome. So now let me bring you to the last question we ask our guests here at Tick Boot Camp. God forbid, and I'm going to pick one of the heroes of your story, your mom, who's been with you for this whole journey, right? You're an
Yep.
awesome lady, right? God
Yep.
forbid your mom came in after this podcast into the room that you're sitting in now, and she said, "Austin, I just found a tick biting me." What would you recommend that your mom do so she wouldn't have to go on a terrible journey you've been on?
Well, the first thing I would do is to ask if she knew how long it was on her and to pull it off and to save it. And to be honest, I don't even know where you can send ticks to get tested, but we would figure it out really quick.
You can go to our
And
you can go to our website. We have it on there for you and all the folks who will listen to
there
this
you go.
podcast.
Yep. Yep. So we would go to that and figure that out. But the biggest thing for me is we're going to get bit by more ticks. I've had ticks crawling on me since then, like it's going to happen. The biggest thing that I think you can do is watch for rashes. And if you feel any kind of different symptom, just go to the doctor and get on Doxy. I mean, it might mess your gut up a little bit, but I just think that's the best thing you can do in the quickest amount of time if something was to happen. That's honestly what I would probably tell her to do. And then while that's going on, we can try to get tick sent off and just see if it has anything, and that'll ease some anxiety as well.
All right. Well, that's a great set of suggestions. And I want to remind our folks that we do have a Tick Bite Blueprint on the Tick Boot Camp website. This has been something we've been growing over the last 5 years because of good folks like Austin who have shared with us their experiences. And now well over 600 folks have shared with us what steps they would take. And we've cultivated all that information and we've put it into a step-by-step guide for you. So please go to tickbootcamp.com. So Austin, this was an awesome podcast. You're an awesome young man, and I'm so excited to have you in the Tick Boot Camp community. So thank you for everything, and please keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it, man.